interests of our increasing hunger, we should fly ahead with Christoph Reuter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here today. I want to talk about timbre spaces and Formant field. Both concepts are dealing with timbre similarity, and it is well known by orchestration treatises that similar timbres blend very well. Different timbres are very easy to separate. So we all know about the multidimensionality of timbre and this famous sentence of Joseph Karl Blickleider in 1951. And nearly 60 years before that, Karl Stumpf came to the same conclusion about the multidimensionality of timbre in 1890 when he was writing about the manifoldness of entities in the second volume of this tone psychology, and in this context he also proposed the first three timbre dimensions. It was brightness from dark to bright, roughness from dull to rough, and whiteness from thin to white. So after a history of more than 125 years of timbral multidimensionality, we have today a number of three or more dimensional spatial representations for timbre and timbre dissimilarity. And mostly the timbre space of John Reihe in 1975 is mentioned as the earliest three-dimensional description. But looking back in history, when we come to Gerhard Albersheim, it is a pupil of Karl Stumpf, who developed the concept of the akustische Farbenkörper as a cylinder of sound colors 36 years before Gray's timbre space, where the middle axis here, the middle axis describes the brightness, while on the view here the vowels are arranges like colors in a color palette, and as a radius here is the distance between the middle axis and the perimeter symbolize the saturation. This means the vowel likeness, how much does it sound like a vowel, like a certain vowel. Okay, I think you can guess my aim to make you curious about some German books about timbre, which haven't been translated into English so far. But let's go back to timbre space, to Gray's timbre space again. And here single instrument timbres on one pitch. It was E flat 4, he arranged along three axes of an Euclidean similarity space using multidimensional scaling of Rissiner rating to get this space, while the axes have been interpreted as a representation of certain timbre features. You see a spectral energy distribution in the first the original sounds, spectral energy distribution or attack transient here from left to right, and so on. And the smaller the distance between these little cubes here, the smaller the timbre differences have been rated by listeners. So more timbre spaces followed, among them the well-known spaces of Kramhansel in 1989 and also McAdams et al. In 1995. And comparing these dimensions of these spaces, one gets the impression that the timbre spaces and the positions of the timbres in them, they should be comparable to a certain extent. Mostly one axis describes the spectral energy distribution, one describes the attack transient, and one describes the amount of spectral flux. So a replication experiment with corresponding instrument timbres of the timbre space of Kramhansel and McAdams, who used the same stimuli set, and of Gray, as well as timbre of the Vienna Symphonic Library, could shed a light on the comparability of the timbre spaces. In a listening experiment, 35 listeners aged between 19 and 72, it was 20 males, 15 females, rated 276 randomized timbre pairs on a scale from 1, very same, and 10 extremely different timbres. And taking the median of all listener ratings, a dissimilarity matrix of all stimuli was obtained, and the entire matrix was transformed into a 4-dimensional timbre space via a non-metrical multi-dimensional scale, visualized here as 3-dimensioned and 1 chroma scale. And in a second step, these 4 dimensions were tested for correlation with a broad range of timbre features calculated for all used timbres with the help of the MATLAB Reihe toolbox. Like in the previous timbre space we have seen before, the first 3 dimensions correlate highest with the spectral distribution. In this case, it's the spectral centroid, the exact time, and the spectral flux. And the fourth dimension can be neglected because the stimuli had been calculated to the same subjective loudness before, and the stimuli length was nearly the same, so it got more or less neglected. And considering only the individual stimuli groups in the multidimensional scaling, that means all stimuli of Kramhansel or all stimuli of Gray, the results of the individual stimuli groups are more or less in accordance to the results of the original particular study. So it was comparable to the certain study. Nevertheless, however, when it comes to a synopsis of all stimuli in 1 meter timbre space, it turned out that timbres of the same author, as Gray or timbres of Kramhansel and McAdams, show a larger similarity than timbres of the same instrument. The sounds are grouped here in certain clusters, in stimuli sets cluster. One can see it here. We have the cluster 1 with more or less Gray timbres, and the cluster 2 with more or less timbre from Kramhansel McAdams field, and the timbres from the Vienna Symphonic Library spread over the whole field. We had also find a certain third cluster with only clarinets. The VSL from the Vienna Symphonic Library had been spread over the whole field. It was also a result of agglomerative cluster analysis. One could say the tested timbre spaces are more stimuli set dependent than instrument dependent, or in other words, timbre spaces are hardly comparable or even generalizable. So to give a first summary, one can say that, of course, timbre spaces are very descriptive, they are very comprehensible and intuitive, but when it comes now to very ambiguous sounds like musical instruments, it's obvious that timbre spaces are not perhaps the best choice, the very best choice, because of their lack of generalizability. Sorry. Especially when keeping in mind that previous timbre spaces were mostly based on resynthesized timbres in one single pitch, while dynamic and articulations are not even mentioned there. So let's take a look at an alternative concept which deals also with timbre similarity and which is more generalizable. Okay, formants. Formants have been used for instrument timbre description by acousticians like David Luce and Melvin Clark when they searched for physical correlates of brass instrument tones in 1967. It was Carl Stumpf again who was the first one who discovered fixed formants in musical instrument sounds in 1926. One is described in a table about formants and spectral maxima in musical instrument timbres located in the appendix of his book Die Sprache, the sounds of speech. Before this time, the word Formant in its sense of fixed and pitch-independent spectral maximum was used for the description of vowel timbres only, as it was introduced by Ludimar Hermann in 1896. And because of their pitch independency, formants should be a good choice when it comes to the description of musical instrument timbres as a whole instead of a single sound. And this was also the idea of Kai Siebenburg and his colleague. Recently stated in their paper about the acoustic and categorical dissimilarity of musical timbre in 2016 that we should keep in mind that when speaking about timbre, there is one concept of the sound and another concept of the whole musical instrument. And while dealing with timbres and the characteristic spectral maxima 90 years ago, it was Carl Stumpf again who had the same idea when he wrote in 1926 in Die Sprachlaut, in the Sounds of Speech, he means the timbre modifications occurring during instrument play, they show us again the difference between the concept of sound and that of musical instrument. Okay, I think I made you even more curious about the works of Carl Stumpf, and we should take a look into this formidable world of formants. Karl Erich Schumann was a pupil of Carl Stumpf. He found in 1929 some generalizable principles in the behavior of musical instrument formants. And in his habilitation thesis, Schumann could confirm the observation of Carl Stumpf and consolidate his finding in his principle of formant areas. It was the Formant Streckengesetz. And he says, okay, formants of musical instruments are fixed and pitch-independent areas. This one here is the x-axis is the time of the y-axis are the pitches, also from the fundamental, but also from the partials. Are fixed and pitch-independent areas of the spectrum wherein partials have exceptionally strong amplitude, so that the timbre impression is influenced mainly by the partials located in this area. And Schumann summarized further observations about the dynamic behavior, the dynamic dependent behavior of the timbre in the principle Formant shifting, in principle of Formant shifting. Principle of Formant shifting as Formant-Verschiebungsgesetz, and with increasing musical dynamics, the strongest amplitude of one partial is shifted to a partial of higher order in the same formant area. If you look here, oboe in piano and oboe in forte to fortissimo, and the principle of spectral gap skipping, that's the Sprunggesetz, is an extreme case of the principle of Formant shifting. With very intense musical dynamics, the strongest amplitude of the first or lowest formant area is here also the red marked one, is shifted to a partial in the second formant area, here in this case, skipping over the partials between these areas. So it sounds like this. Much more brighter than this. And you see these partials didn't change in there. And like the works of Carl Stumpf, also the habilitation thesis of Karl Erich Schumann has never been translated into English, but in German literature, formants became one of the most common tools for description of musical wind instrument timbres. So in 1976 and later more distinct in 1986, Jobst Fricke set up a theory about fragmentary masking of musical instrument timbres with non-overlapping format. He assumed that musical instrument timbres can be distinguished very well by playing together from a total sound mixture because of the fact that the informants of one instrument are located in the spectral gaps of the other instrument and vice versa. And testing this hypothesis in 1995-1996, with scale segments of unison playing instrument in all reachable pitches, I could mostly confirm this hypothesis, especially in the case of woodwind and brass instruments with strong distinctive first formant areas when playing in the low and middle register. And Sven Armin Lenke shows us already, but we'll show it also. But the first one was, we have here a bassoon, and we have here a trumpet. Same loudness, playing together. And they're very good separable when playing in unison together on a mono. During the study, I also found the opposite of the principle of fragmentary masking in 1996, the timbre blending is caused by overlapping of corresponding formant areas. This means that when two instruments with corresponding first formants are playing together in unison, it's not easy or sometimes not even possible to distinguish a single instrument from the total sound mixture. So it's a case here. We have a bassoon, with French horn. They have both formant between 300 and 500 Hertz, both spectrum maximum in this area. It's not very possible to separate them, but if you mix French horn together with a oboe, who has its first formant in an area between 1000 and 1400, it's more easier to separate them. Okay, the next obvious step was for me to search in orchestration treatises for comments and advices about timbre in blending and separation. During 1996 and 2001, I found a lot of them in more than 70 orchestration treatises and similar works, and all these comments and remarks have been very consistent with the formant-based theory of timbre blending and fragmentary masking. So on this finding a formant-based orchestration treatise for wind instrument was possible, which is in conformity with preceding orchestration treatises, and where all remarks about timbre register of all different authors are listed systematically in tables. And I'm sure it will be helpful to Stephen McAdams' project, so I would like to give you one example of this book as a present, and in the hope we can work close together in the future time. Formants are not only a helpful tool in the research of timbre blending, of simultaneous playing timbres, musical instruments, but also very suitable for predicting the auditory grouping of successive playing, alternating instrument timbres. So in 2003, I could present a little study on the ESCOM conference with the result that alternating timbres with corresponding main formant area lead up to one sole continuous melody to one melodic stream. One can look here, same format. Most of the listeners hear one sole melodic stream. Different formats. Audio also. Listeners hear two melodic streams. So when formats are such a useful and intuitive tool, wouldn't it be good to put them in a timbre space like context to put these ideas together? So with the help of the phonetic software ParisTech, the first and second formant, the F1, F2, of flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, horn, trumpet, trombone, and tuba, have been measured in all reachable pitches in two different dynamics, in fortissimo and pianissimo. And in the field between these two formant axes, here F1, F the Y axis, the F2, each pitch and each dynamic is symbolized by a single point. The round one, the circles one at piano, the square one is fortissimo, and inside this Formant field, actually my work in progress, the musical instruments are with their registers and their dynamic degrees can be represented by clouds of parallel points. So it's easy to separate visually non-blending instrument timbres like oboe and bassoon. Oboe is the gray one and bassoon the orange one. Or to match visually blending instrument timbres like oboe and trumpet. Or to show the influence and dynamic of musical instrument timbres, so to get the obvious why horn in piano. A horn in piano is more comparable with a bassoon in piano, and a horn in fortissimo is more comparable to a trumpet in fortissimo. It's also easy to find the corresponding vowels. A horn sounds like an O, O, O. A trumpet sounds like an A, and when you it's more than an A, it's more than O, and so on. As long as the instruments have distinct formants, this model seems to work quite well. Unfortunately, it is not the case when the formants are not distinct enough, like it's the case of the flute. I have to the flute, or in the case of the clarinet, then it doesn't work. But with the help of the mean and the standard deviation, it's also possible to find instrument combinations which should be very well separable, like tuba in pianissimo, bassoon, trombone in fortissimo, oboe in fortissimo, and horn in fortissimo. In the plate, in low and middle register, they should be separable very well, and so on. So all in all, if the formats are noticeable enough, a Formant field provides intuitive information about whole instruments, their register, as well as their dynamics. It is generally reusable because in the history of timbre research, formats are musical instruments have been explored since 90 years with comparable results, and formats can be used for the prediction of timbre blending as well as for prediction of auditory grouping. But one has to keep in mind that the Formant field is only used for musical instrument timbres with distinctive format structures. It is double reed and brass instrument, nothing more, especially when played in middle and low register. But that's beginning. Temporal patterns like attack transients or roughness are completely neglected here, and there's a lot more to do, like including the formant width, or to do listening experiments about the correlation between formant positions and timbre similarities. So a little bit is just to. I want to thank my colleague Sali Sigig, Isabella Eisenberg, and Michael Oehler, who are involved in lots of the studies I presented here, and furthermore the Jubiläumsfonds of the Austrian National Bank for financial support, the Vienna Symphonic Library for the support with two VSL super packages, and of course, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. I find this concept of a Formant from musical instruments fascinating, but at the same time, there's something I don't understand. From my understanding, formants come from speech, in which you have, so speech is usually modeled as a source, the vocal folds, and a filter, the vocal tract. And the nice thing is that they are essentially independent one from another, so you can vary the pitch. So pitch and formant frequencies are independent. If we take the case of a musical instrument, there is a strong coupling between the vibration of the reeds, for instance, and the length of the pipe.
Yes.
So how, I don't see how Formant frequencies and pitch can be independent.
Yes, I understand your question. Yes, it's a good one. If you look at the tube of the musical instrument is only for getting the pitch. But if you look perhaps of double reed, of the reeds of the double reed and the closing and opening time, you can see that it's and sometimes 4 times more longer open than closed. So you have a relationship between open times and closed times. So this relationship is 1 to 4. That means that the 4th, the 8th, the 12th, and the 16th, and so on partial cannot get, and between them there are these cycling structures. So the Formant structure is formed at the mouthpiece. It's very good at brass instrument and double reed instrument, and not so good when you have the flute, where you have to air streams randomly getting out, getting in, getting out, getting in, but which are not so very well controllable like the opening and closing times at the embouchure or at the reeds. I think that's the reason for formants in wind instruments.
So that means that the Formant structure comes from the vibration from the source and not from the resonator.
Yes, the resonator has much less effect. It has an effect on the as a lower boundary of the first formant because of the radiation. You have a large bell from a horn, so you get a much deeper formant in comparison to a small bell you have on a trumpet or a trombone. So the first formant is yes.
Can I follow up on that? Does that work for double reed and single reed, or only one or only the other?
It works better for double reed. For single reed, it works in the middle and the high register. In the low register, if you have a single reed instrument, you have an influence, or you have a great influence of the tube, because one part of the tube is closed, and if you have an oboe, you have a similar situation, but you have a conical tube, so you get all harmonics in one tube. But in this case, in the case of the clarinet, development of formants in the low register is not so much possible, because every second partial is lost. But from the middle register, it sounds more and more trumpet-like, and most of the studies or experiments about formants in clarinet timbres, they say, okay, there's also a trumpet-like formant in the clarine register, who was used as a trumpet instrument in baroque times, classical times.
Any quick questions to finish on? If not, thank you very much.